It's Mock Draft Monday on the Bullpen, and who doesn't love a good mock draft? We're going to talk about prospects, Texans draft picks, and more on this edition of the Bullpen.
To throw the punches on. He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Touchdown for a Texan touchdown.
Well, hello and welcome to this edition of the Bullpen. For those of you listening, we do have visual aids for this episode. We will be, actively conducting mock drafts. We are using the NFLDraftBuzz.com mock draft simulator. Tom and I are each going to do one. The benefit of this for Tom and I is that we're going to get to right in front of your very eyes, get a little more educated on the prospects, and you guys get to listen to us do that. So what a time. Tom, before we get started, how are you doing today?
I'm really good. Watching the intro, I'm thinking about the Texans' next sleeper pick that becomes a stud, the next Tank Dell. I'm hoping that they get their hands on one more blue chip in, say, the third round, fourth round, something like that. That next year we're talking about them trying to find that guy in the next draft.
No, yeah, and it's a little bit less depressing to see it because we know that the next time we see the Texans play, we will get to see C.J. Stroud and Tank Dell squabble, if you will. And if you're not watching, I tried my very best attempt at a squabble. I probably shouldn't do that. I'll leave that to Tank and CJ. But yeah, so speaking of your third and fourth round, that's the deepest we're going to go. We're going to go with 3-round mocks. Just as the picks lie, we're not conducting any trades. So, and you're kind of going to get, an inside look at our thought process because it's very early, Tom. It is incredibly early to be doing a mock draft. So what if Steven Nelson resigns? What if the Texans decide to run it back with the exact same linebacker group? What if they, say Jimmy Ward just needs another season, they don't cut him, and they decide they don't need to address safety at all? There's a lot of moving pieces to what the Texans are doing, and so a lot of these picks are going to need some explanation. But without further ado, I'm going to bring it up. If you guys are, once again, if you're listening, I'm going to get it up. I've got the website pulled up. We've got, let's see, I'll set it to 3 rounds, 40 seconds, and we are the Texans. And another note is that we don't know who's going to be available at the pick because at this point, this mock draft simulator has thrown quite a few random things, wrenches in the plan, if you will. Who knows if Brock Bowers might be available at 23 with the way that this mock draft simulator is going, but let's get it going. I'm going to go ahead and start the draft. And Tom, I want you to go first. So I'm going to get it rolling. We're running through MHJ off the board at the top. Let's see. Sorry, Caleb Williams was at the top. See, Brock Bowers at 11 to me is interesting. Because I don't see him making it out of the top 10. But
I think all of this changes to, obviously, pro days, different tests. Somebody runs a slow 40 time. You're going to see guys shuffle up and down. It'll be interesting to see who's available at 23 for the Texans. Right now.
And if you look at 22, the Eagles took Kool-Aid McKinstry, which is like my go-to right now. At this point, if I was picking, that was where I would go, and it would be frustrating. But Tom, I'll scroll through the prospects for you if you stop me when you see a name that you like.
So mine is different than yours, I think.
Well, yours will be different, but that's going to be a tough part about conducting this. We're kind of working out the kinks as we go, but let's see why all these ads keep popping up. Jeez. But I guess if you have someone on yours, I can see if they show up on mine.
So for me, Kool-Aid went at 20 to the Steelers, which is really interesting because I don't know that they need a corner. Obviously, their secondary had some issues, but I thought that was due to injury. So what I have available to me on this on my mock draft that I ran, I have Tyler Nubin as the number 1 guy, safety out of Minnesota. There behind him would be Quinyon Mitchell, a corner out of Toledo. That's just from the DB perspective. If we feel that DB is the direction that they're going to go. Right now, until I see them spend the money, I feel like DB makes a lot of sense. I think edge rusher could make a lot of sense too, where I've got Chop Robinson as the best available. That seems like a reach the way they have him ranked. They have him ranked 38. if we're just looking at the best available, it's probably Amaris Mims, a tackle. And I don't know that I want to like we talked about. I don't think that the ideal position for them is tackle. So what I'm going to do with this draft is I'm going to draft Keon Coleman, your guy, the wide receiver from Florida State.
All right, and he's on my board, so I'll go ahead and mark it since I'm presenting. I think that you can present if you share your screen, I'm pretty sure I can put it up here, and then that might be
Both
a
of
good.
them, I was just going to let you do yours, and they would see yours, and then I would do mine over here.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We're figuring this out, guys. This is the first mock draft Monday of the Bullpen's history, so
First of many. First of many.
Let's see. So for me, and you guys can see it, Brian Thomas, a lot of the really good picks came off the board. Man, imagine if Cooper DeJean of Iowa made it down. That's like the first, white starting level corner, first round pick. I don't think there's been a starting corner that's been white in the league for like several years now, but he's out. Let's see. It's a tough pick at this. There's part of me that wants to go with Kamari Lassiter, but I'm not super familiar with his game. I'm going to go ahead and pull up his scouting profile. Let's see. 4.58 40, and the source of that's not even like high school or college or anything, but not the quickest corner. 4-star prospect per ESPN 24/7 Sports and Rivals. Draft bio. Let's see. Hit the ground running as a true freshman. So let's see. Here's his strengths: fluid athlete, the ability to match perimeter wideouts in NFL, transitional quickness, displays an impressive vertical route coverage due to his swift transitional quickness. I'll tell you, I the 40 times always baffled me because a 4.58 40 is not the quickest 40 I've ever seen, but I guess it doesn't really matter in the cornerback game because you are already at such a disadvantage. It's not really about straight line speed. It's about your quickness and ability to cover. But let's see, highly effective on the perimeter, exhibits sharp instinct. Let's see, weakness. While displaying physical play style, his wiry build may not match up well against the bigger NFL perimeter receivers. I don't know if I like that. Shows tendency to rely on grabbing to enhance disruptiveness, which resulted in penalties. We don't need any of those. It's not a good look. I'm just gonna go with my gut. Nothing on the scouting report sticks out. I would need to look a lot closer at it to feel good about that pick. I'll say that if Keon Coleman is available to the Texans here, I'd have trouble not taking him. So I'm also gonna go Keon Coleman. And while mine is moving forward, if you want to, what's going on with yours right now?
So I'm on the clock. It's my pick. I have a couple of different options my way. I've got a corner that's still on the board that I think could be a reasonable value. He's ranked number 58. It's Josh Newton out of TCU. But the player that I'm interested in is an edge rusher, Chris Jenkins from Michigan. Obviously, Michigan won the national championship. I'm looking over his profile right now. Son of a football player, 4-time Pro Bowler, Chris Jenkins Sr. So, the pedigree's there. Somebody I think that D'Amico could work with. Scouting report says he's tough against the run, which we really need that. Hard to push around to a solid stance and strength. The weaknesses, needs to ramp up his game as a pass rusher, which kind of scary because I'm thinking if they go this route, it's to potentially replace John Grenard. So I don't know how I love that. I think edge rusher is the way to go. And I'm just going to take a shot on Chris Jenkins, hoping that they can coach him up.
All right. Let me see. So honestly, if you look on my screen, and in the second round, I've got three guys that I like really am interested in for different reasons. You got Edrin Cooper out of Texas A&M, and Tavondre Sweat, which would be the defensive picks. Now, this is assuming that the Texans either don't keep Blake Cashman or a significant number of their linebackers, or maybe You got a guy in the second round that you think could possibly develop like a Christian Harris type. Obviously drafted a little sooner. More play ready at this draft position, and I don't know if the Texans have that deep of a need at linebacker. I think that there is. I'd equate linebacker to O line in a way where there like a lot of pieces are already there. It's just and there's just not a lot you can really do to fix it except for throw more at it. And so that's my hesitancy to draft at linebacker. As far as the D line goes, I feel like that depth in the D line has been a big issue. So I do like Tavondre Sweat from that perspective. And then Jonathan Brooks is another name that pops out because I think the Texans' run game doesn't just need the offensive line to step up. I think that a lot of people underestimate Kenyon Green coming back because was meant to be that run blocking left guard. And so the Texans' issues with run blocking, I think, more stem from injury. There is work to be done, but I mean, we didn't really ever see the best version of the Texans' offensive line. So that's also there's 3 players that are locked up on contracts. The only places you can really adjust are center and guard. So if I'm looking at it, I don't know, man. This is like worst case scenario for me because it's a tough choice. I mean, if I had to make a choice here, I'll probably go with Tavondre Sweat. Now, this is going to assume that the Texans address running back in free agency. I think Saquon Barkley is the Texans' Twitter favorite so far. Him and then Seth Payne implied that Derrick Henry's ability to run behind the trash Titans offensive line really would be useful in the Texans situation if the offensive line doesn't progress. So with that in mind, I'm going to go with Tavondre Sweat.
As a Longhorn fan, I love the pick. I was trying really hard to be objective and not just go pull my guys from college that I followed. He was a monster at UT, so big fan of that pick.
If Byron Murphy fell, there was a lot of people I heard talking about Byron Murphy being like up closer into the first round. I don't know where his rating is falling, but he's been getting drafted somewhere around the early second round. But I can't. That's a biased thing for me too. Huge Texas fan. If I felt like we had a deeper need at linebacker, or if I'm trying to emulate what the Lions did last year with Jack Campbell, I'd probably go with Edrin Cooper, just to like get that young linebacker, like another young piece in the linebacking core. But I think that either way, I addressed the front 7, and that really is what needed to happen. So
I thought it interesting on your screen, you had 4 trade offers and you just instantly rejected. I went through the trade offers and I looked at them. I was going to present them to you and see what you thought about some of them. They're actually really interesting from a standpoint that it almost seems too good to be true.
The Cowboys offered me DeMarvion Overshawn, who I was really high on last year, but offering a rookie linebacker or a second-year linebacker, I guess at this point in a trade, just doesn't make any sense at all. So that's my thing. That's why I know that Nick Caserio is going to make like 100 trades on draft day. That's just who he is. He'll trade, a bag of chips for, and a 7th round pick to move up half a spot if that's what it takes, if that's what he sees fit to do. But I think the draft simulator, its biggest weakness is the trades just aren't great. And I think that you're about to illustrate that for us in terms of accuracy, at least. So let's hear it.
The very first trade I got was from the Vikings. This is for the 85th pick, the 3rd round. They offered me their 4th round, which was 130, their 5th round, which was 166, their 7th round, which was 230, and Ty Chandler, which I was like, wow, that's a lot.
That's generous.
But it seems like you said a little too good to be true. The next offer was 2 6th rounds from this year from the Bucks, a 3rd round in 2025, a 4th round in 2025, and De'Aaron Sinnett, D tackle, which again seems like a lot for the 85th pick. Obviously, I guess I don't know what the value is or whatever, but and then the Bengals came in with a 4th round pick this year, then a third, a sixth, and a seventh next year. So for all of those reasons that we talked about, I'm rejecting them, and we'll go back to the draft. So at 85, I've got a couple different options. I haven't addressed corner, so corner's still out there. I could go pull another Wolverine, Mike Sandrill.
He's on mine too. Sane
I'm
Ristel.
butchering this thing. I'm sorry.
I feel that
Sane
too.
Ristel. Maybe that's it. If the Texans feel like wide receiver is an option, Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky, he's rated a little bit higher than that pick. There's also another edge we could go.
I believe that's Malachi.
Okay.
I think so. I think that's how I've heard that said before.
So it's really just interesting. I don't necessarily know what direction we're going to go based on what the need is. So hypothetically, I'm going to say they don't bring back Dalton Schultz, and they want to go out and get a tight end. So I've got a guy that was a tight end and an edge rusher out of Ohio State, Cade Stover, and I'm going to look at him a little
still
bit.
On your board, nice.
He's still on my board.
I don't believe he played edge. I've seen that on there. I don't know what that means. Tight end / edge. Maybe he did. I mean, JJ Watt played tight end and then played, defensive line. So I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility, but it's a weird label.
It says Stover was originally recruited as a linebacker, but transitioned to defensive end before his freshman season. He flipped from tight end to linebacker in 2020 and 2021, serving in a reserve role, and only became a full-time tight end recently. So a lot of tread on the tires. Wasn't out there getting pounded on a ton. So in 2022, he had 36 catches for 406 yards and 6 TDs. So
it's like reverse JJ Watt. What is how do you say in terms of his strengths and weaknesses? Is he like a good blocking tight end or?
So this says solid. This is a strength, solid, well proportioned frame with good box out utility and length, explosive enough to get deep and manages to get a step on linebackers. Physical after the catch, consistently finishes forward against contact. Strong hand strength, can pry passes away from defenders. So a lot of his strengths are built on his catching ability. So his weaknesses: lack speed to maintain space, can be run down by faster athletes.
I got it right here. If you look, I pulled up his profile on my screen and I just highlighted it. This last one. Jeez. Blocking skills are very underdeveloped due to his overall inexperience in playing offense.
But if that's a need, obviously this is a guy that you build up in the same vein as Brevin Jordan. Brevin Jordan, I don't think coming out of college was a huge, highly ranked tight end, and he just kind of got coached up.
Yeah, Brevin Jordan was definitely touted as more of a receiving prospect at the tight end position, and I think they worked him up to get like a lot better at blocking than maybe some expected him to get. I would say that to me in a tight end at this point, I guess if we're not keeping Dalton Schultz, the receiving part is vital. But I'd also looking at what kind of got the Texans in the Ravens game was there was brief stretches where they pulled in extra blockers and it really helped out. And I'd hate to pull extra blockers, like keep the tight end at home and just not really know if he's capable of doing any kind of blocking whatsoever. It's also interesting to me that Cade Stover played defensive end and played in that role in the trenches, and the part that he's not good at, or I shouldn't say not good at, but that one of his weaknesses is blocking. I know it's different, obviously rushing and blocking are not the same thing, but you would just think that those skills would translate a little better than catching the ball as a lineman, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what they do. I'm really torn right now. We've got the wide receiver, we've got an edge rusher. I feel like the next position is maybe tight end. I mean, we could go back to the safety thing, and you've got Tyke Smith out of Georgia. I feel like that could be something, maybe they go that route. Maybe they develop a safety.
That could be good. Let me see. Pull his profile up.
Good strength to tackle, plays with high energy, and is tough-minded overachiever.
He had
Good
4 interceptions.
instincts.
That's nice. Let's see. A 4.50 40, 5'10", 205 pounds. His greatest attribute in terms of his ratings is coverage,
Which is huge.
with man being better than zone.
You think about Petrie being more of the guy that you want in the box, being a hitter. If Petrie is the one safety going forward, this would be probably a step in the right direction for the other safety, being a good cover guy, having good instincts.
Oh yeah. Let me see.
So
He's a 3-star on all websites except for Rivals, coming out of, I want to say, high school. And it looks like he's got like a good amount of experience. It's not like he just started playing this year.
if he's playing for Georgia, it's not a fluke. It's not an accident. I mean, that's as good as it gets, right?
There's a reason that what's it called? There's a reason the Eagles are trying to rebuild Georgia's defense. Good strength to tackle.
5th-year senior. Played in 13 games, 594 snaps, 51 tackles, 14 assists, 26 stops. Sign me up for this guy.
All right. You want to go ahead and make the pick?
Drafting Tyke Smith, safety out of Georgia.
All right. I'm put in an interesting position with my 3rd round pick because a lot of the clamoring, a lot of what people want to see the Texans do, it revolves around the O-line. I've heard 100 different people in the past week or two say, well, it's the offensive line's fault. The offensive line couldn't pass block for CJ, couldn't run block, all these different things. We can run in circles trying to find the reasoning for why the Texans didn't do well, but in most people's minds, the offensive line is somewhat culpable. Now, there are a lot of people, myself included, that will give a lot of credence to the thought that, the Texans O-line was not healthy. And so when you look at that, you can draft for these positions, but a lot of these positions, the depth is leaving, so it's not bad to have that depth on the roster if that's what you're going to get. But I think the 3rd round is the earliest that you contemplate making that decision of, I can draft this guy. He looks like he has starter potential, but if he becomes a backup, he's a 3rd round pick. That's like only a little bit high for O-line draft capital. It's like the latest point at which you go, okay, like I feel like I might be drafting a starter, but who knows, right? O-line is just so hard to gauge in the draft. And so the top pick that I have available is K-State's Cooper Beebe. And he plays guard. I'd have to look and see. I don't know where most of his snaps took place. He's rated excellently at pass blocking and is rated pretty good at run blocking. I'd like to see his snap count breakdown. I don't know if this website does that, but I'm interested to see if he played a whole lot of left guard or if he mostly played right guard. I need to get a little bit more familiar with this, but let's see. Oh, so he played in 2021. He played left tackle for 13 games, and then he played left guard in 2022 and 2023 for most of his snaps in 2023, I should say. He allowed 8 QB hurries, no QB hits, and 1 sack during that season. Let's see. I'd like to see if his strengths trend towards the run game, because if he's like a run blocker, I might just call it now and go for him. Because I've been so far in the mock drafts I've done in this short amount of time in this offseason, I haven't really paid much mind to the offensive line, but I do think at this stage in the draft, there's reason to believe that it could be a good idea. He says potential developing patience in pass protection, currently has some issues with leaning and lunging. Displays good awareness when it comes to reading moving bodies, effectively reacting and adjusting. He also shows good feel for combo blocks. At his best, mauling in the run game, playing with the nasty demeanor and consistently keeping it going through the whistle. Love to see it. I mean, it just seems like the kind of guy that fits the, swarm, the Texans mentality of like, give it your all, get after it. Let's see. For his weaknesses, despite showing capability, BB often struggles with maintaining balance and avoiding lunging. That's kind of weird how they described that in his strengths as if it was like I knew that was a weakness when I read his strengths because it was said there. So it was kind of redundant to put it, but oh well. Though he has the traits to improve, BB needs to work on his patience and balance during his set. Inconsistencies with his kick slide need to be addressed. And while he shows potential in pass protection, BB currently seems more comfortable moving forward than sliding back as a protector. Which, I mean, personally, like I said, it seems like his strengths trend towards the run. I mean, other picks that I have available, like you said earlier, Mike Sainristil, out of Michigan at corner, might be a solid pick if Nelson was to leave. I already drafted the D line, so Braden Fisk doesn't really fit what I need to do. Malachi Corley, let's see what build is he. So my thing with the receiver, we've had that discussion before where we talk about adding a receiver that like fits that third receiver in the Bengals receiving room. And at this point, we'd be looking for a Tyler Boyd. You could bump Tank Dell up to the T. Higgins role, and you could bump Nico Collins up to like a Jamar Chase type. Not that they match build wise or anything else, but just for the sake of comparison, if we're drafting a third round wide receiver, I'm not exactly expecting him to step up and play at that level. And I'm also looking for more of a prototypical build, not like so. Nico Collins is
I'd
great.
say 5'11" doesn't get you there.
Yeah, 5'11". So I already looked and like it says slot receiver 5'11", and he's only running a 4.46 40, which is in other sources. It doesn't tell you where they measured that at, but just looking already, I don't need to read anything else to know that this is not likely what the Texans are looking for. They have like 6 slot receivers on the roster as it stands. So, yeah, I mean, the only other prospect I'd probably consider is Maris Leofau out of Notre Dame. I'd probably check his profile to see if he has like a fake girlfriend or something.
Oof,
We wouldn't want
really?
another Manti Te'o type story unfolding in in the NFL, not in Houston. We can let San Diego or I guess LA at this point handle that one. Um, and I mean, for all intents and purposes, it looks like he's pretty solid. I just once again, I go back to the fact that I'm just not sold on the fact that this Texans team is going to use high draft capital on linebacker. If they let someone walk, they'll probably sign someone else. I don't see why they draft. They already have Christian Harris, young developing linebacker. They've gotten the best out of Blake Cashman. Denzel Perryman, I think, is odd man out in terms of guys that they might let walk because of his inability to stay on the field. But I mean, you could say that about Blake Cashman too, I guess. So if one of those two walks, I don't know why they would go with use a draft pick to try and fill that hole. They already have Toa Toa in the Raptors, developing. So I mean, unless they think he's starting ready, like already ready to go, I'm gonna have to go with Cooper Beebe here. So I'll go ahead and hit draft on that, and that's 3 rounds. So for me, final is Keon Coleman, Tavondre Sweat, and Cooper Beebe. So addressed wide receiver, and that's another reason why I couldn't go with Malachi Corley in the 3rd round is that I'd already picked a wide receiver at the top. And so I don't know. I didn't see any reason to pick him. But Keon Coleman to me is the build and the type of guy that fits, stepping in and either being a Jamar Chase or T. Higgins type in that comparison. So I think that with this draft that I've given, we're taking the route of let's supercharge the offense and see what happens. And we're hoping that Keon Coleman is that at the 23rd pick. And then Tavondre Sweat, and you were just shoring up the trenches, giving the guy some help. But your final result, you had Keon Coleman in the 1st round, but who are your other 2 picks?
I already reset it. I'm not gonna lie.
You're not gonna. Oh,
I know I went safety. I really feel like the Texans need to hit with the 1st round pick. To be honest with you, outside of Keon Coleman, I think we both agree that that's the way that we think the Texans should go. I think we could see, like you said, I think the second, the third, I think they both could be had to build draft capital. So while Tavondre Sweat would look great, Cooper Beebe would look great, I feel like there's a good chance that you called it, that we're going to see a la the Patriots of old. We're going to see Caserio trade back to acquire more picks and try to build in the fourth, fifth, sixth round. Because as D'Amico said in the past, that's where he feels like he gets to do his work, where he becomes the teacher, where he gets to take a guy and mold him into something. The top three guys, they're day one starters. The top 3 rounds, those guys are coming in. It's expected to do their work. The 4, 5, and 6 rounds and the 7th round, he feels like those are guys that he can coach up to create a better player.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. And with that, I mean, even considering, right, we both picked Keon Coleman. I don't think Keon Coleman makes it to 23. I think that he gets picked earlier. Him and so there's a few. Mel Kiper's first mock draft, which once again I'll clarify because we're doing mock draft Monday. We like looking at the prospects and seeing them, but we both understand that this is way early. We don't know anything about what the Texans are. March 13th is the earliest we kind of start to see the vision from the Texans, right? But Mel Kiper's first mock draft has 7 wide receivers going in the first round. So the likelihood, if in knowing what I know, because wide receiver is one of the few positions I did keep pretty close tabs on during the season while the Texans were playing meaningful football. It's hard not to catch a highlight from the college level when it happens. You know, and obviously we don't need quarterback. So like I'm like, oh, quarterback, okay, whatever. But Keon Coleman caught my eye, and looking at the receivers that potentially could go, I can't really name too many that I think teams would pick ahead of him. So, you know, there's Marvin Harrison Jr., there's Rome Odunze, and Brian Thomas. Or is it Brian Thomas? The guy out of LSU. Now I'm losing my mind right now because I need to look that up. It is, let's see. Oh, Malik Neighbors is another one. So that's 1, 2, 3.
That's the wide receiver out of LSU.
Yeah, he's out of LSU, and then Brian Thomas. Yeah, I said it's Brian Thomas. So those are the guys that go in front. I mean, I guess I could see Keon Coleman falling to Houston, knowing that now. I underestimated how many were in front of him, but yeah, so that's 4 or 5 wide receivers. And like I said, this simulator is just not going to catch what teams are thinking at this point. It doesn't know. I don't even know if it would adjust after. So, I mean,
and in this one, in the one that I have, Brian Thomas is the 29th ranked wide receiver behind the ones you mentioned, Xavier Leggett, or this is the total rank. I'm sorry, not the ranked wide receiver, but the total rank, 29th ranked prospect. Behind Xavier Leggett, Troy Franklin, and then Brian Thomas. So there could be a lot of different teams that have different draft grades on some of these guys where Keon Coleman falls to the Texans, and that works out great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of hoping for if the Texans go wide receiver in the first round, which I think every year since I've become a Texans fan, you know, that DeAndre Hopkins, even with DeAndre Hopkins on the team, right? Every year that I've been a Texans fan, there's been this strong desire to spend first round picks on wide receivers from the fan base just to like have someone to support. And I think the only year we truly got like the experience of what it feels like to have like, you know, a true number 1 and then a true number 2 wide receiver was that brief stretch where DeAndre Hopkins and Andre Johnson were on the same team, but they were like trains passing in the night. They just didn't catch each other at the right time. Imagine a receiving core with Andre Johnson as wide receiver 1 and DeAndre Hopkins as wide receiver 2. Like, a clear cut, like, AJ's ready to have a great year. You know, he's not at the end of his career, and he's not being asked to sit and play wide receiver 2 because DeAndre's ready. Like, imagine that. That's just, I don't even know. But yeah, so I mean, I understand the hype of getting a wide receiver, and I think a good one will be available. It's just a matter of what the Texans want to do.
Like selfishly, the Longhorn in me, if Xavier Worthy gets anywhere near that 58, and we just got to move up a little bit to go get him, that guy's a stud. And
yeah, he's quick. I mean, I saw several plays, and you know, because personally, if you want to, I watch like the big college football games, and I watch the Texas games. That's really all of my college football viewing experience. So I watched Xavier Hutchinson, or not Xavier. I'm getting caught up on who's on the roster right now. I watched Xavier Worthy catch passes that he had no business taking to the house and just jetting and just getting there. So I mean, there you spoke to it before, and I think we're going to be applying this principle at points throughout our mock draft experience. The Texans have gotten to a point where it's really best player available. They're going to have 2 or 3 options in mind, and they're going to have to pick who they think most improves the roster. So once you have your quarterback and, there's no glaring holes in the roster, it's just really about, shoring up positions and making them better by a lot. So you have to think that this talent that's coming in, you have to decide, is this guy really improving our receiving core by that much? Is this guy really improving the cornerback room by that much? And that, I think, is the metric it's going to be easier to see where the Texans are looking once we have that in mind, once the free agency shakes out. But Tom, it's been a fun mock draft Monday. Do you have any final thoughts for the viewers before we kind of send them on their way?
Again, guys, we just want to get the ball rolling, kind of kick some stuff around. Obviously, we understand that this is all subject to change, and we could be talking about totally different needs. We could be talking about totally different scenarios. Hell, they could trade half these picks away, and the Texans take nothing from the draft because they're kind of built to do some things in free agency that if they get those done early, you could make trades to gain draft picks later on in life and just roll with what you go out and buy as opposed to what you want to develop. So we're aware of that. We just want to, like I said, get a better feel for these players, get a better understanding what the Texans could be looking at. And I think this is a great way. I appreciate James for dreaming this up, because I think this is a great way to understand what's out there, because there's a lot of these guys that I can't even say their names right, but we'll get there.
No, yeah, and I'm glad to do this. Like I said, this is huge benefit to us because we get to kind of show you how we're doing our own research, and we are far from experts. We know that. So it's nice to kind of have this forum to kind of talk about it and get a more educated. Personally, like I feel like I got a lot out of this just reading some of the scouting reports and thinking through what I think the Texans should do. But luckily, I'm not the GM of the Texans, so I don't have to, at the end of the day, make that decision. But speaking to free agents, we're going to be releasing an episode on Friday. So this is Mock Draft Monday. If you tune in on Friday, we'll be talking about free agents. And if you tune in on Wednesday live, you can catch us review Mike of Mike's Book Reviews. He's a H-Town native, a huge Texans fan. I follow him on Twitter, and always on game day, super active talking about the game. Has like over 100,000 subscribers on his BookTube account. He's like the BookTube guy. So if you like books and you like the Texans, this is the episode for you. It'll be live on Wednesday, and then if you want to listen to it, it'll be available on Thursday through Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So tune in. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. If you want to find me on social media, I'm at M1 Texans Fan. That's also how you can find the podcast on YouTube if you want to see the mock drafts that we put together here on this episode. And Tom is Third Coast Tom. You can find him on Twitter. You'll never hear him referred to it as X because that's just not his style. But until next time, thanks for listening, and stay classy, Houston. Vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.